Hello, welcome to Jake's Existential Kitchen. Existential Kitchen. Jake's Existential Kitchen. Welcome to my voice. Lucky you. I appreciate you listening. This is episode 6 today, is with Mike Kresky, part 2. We couldn't wait to just keep talking and exploring ideas, and just got back at it, and again just had like a really awesome time and had a really really thought-provoking and inspiring conversation with Mike. And just hanging out in general. I mean, we hung out for hours and talked before we turned the microphone on, just because it's just what was happening. And I really appreciate that, that ability, to go into those spaces and explore thoughts and ideas, and very appreciative and grateful for Mike to come and just share himself with us again. Very grateful. And with that being said, I don't see why I would need to ramble on too much right now about anything in particular. As we all do, I've been thinking about quite a lot of stuff, but you're about to hear me also be talking for a while. So, without further ado, episode 6 of Jake's Existential Kitchen. Welcome, our friend, Mike Kresky. Sounds sweet, man.
Oh, I love playing music.
Hey, you wanna just hop right in?
Yeah.
All right. Let me turn this thing up just a little tiny bit. Welcome, Mike Kresky, to Jake's Existential Kitchen at your house, where you have been feeding me. Thanks for having me here and doing this again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm really looking forward to this. So I wanted to ask you about how you experience. So like when I was watching that first video that you sent me of you tracking, just right away when you're pointing at the raccoon tracks, you just bring to life this just the whole scene of them all walking together. You literally started walking like them, showing how they would be moving, but like from seeing like a remnants from something that had happened in a previous time to where you were, when that video was being shot. You were able to bring that time into where you were, after that event had happened. And it just got me thinking. I was just like, oh, you're like the time wizard or something, it's just totally expanding, beyond the bounds of the moment that you're in, like we are right now, in this moment, and being able to tap into other times and other things that have happened where you might be at. And I was curious to hear what that experience is like for you as you're in that scenario, looking at some tracks or evidence of something that has happened recently somewhere.
Yeah, nuts and bolts. Tracking is a way of doing detection. It has forensics in it. It has detective skills, and once you get some experience with tracking and how animals move and stuff, you can extrapolate from the tracks pretty accurately what the animals are doing, and the aging aspect of tracking is interesting. Like you're saying, like I'm like creating this story out of some time, of another time. These things came from another time, and they did come from the night before, and at a lower tide, and there's different clues on the landscape that tell you like when things happened, and some of it has to do with like when a track's put down, another person or another thing might come and step over it, or there might be a wind event or something to create a sequence of events. And what you do as a tracker is that you piece together the sequence up to the time of the track that you're analyzing or the trail that you're analyzing, so that you can put it in a time frame. And also be inside of the animal in a way. Like you want to know that this came in the dark, and that there was a moonlight there, and I think for the sake of the podcast, we should also presence what Jake is talking about is a video, a virtual hike or a virtual tracking video that I did with this company in San Ynez Valley called Nature Track. And a woman called me up and wanted me to come and do a virtual hike for her K through 12 students. And I jumped on the offer. I'd never been to the Oceano Dune, or no, those aren't Oceano Dunes. That's Ocean Beach Park in Lompoc. It's where the San Ynez River comes out to the ocean, and I'd never been to that place before. And she followed me around the dune complex area, and we just looked at different tracks. And that's what Jake's referencing here in the first segment of that video is me coming upon some raccoon tracks that crossed the estuary the night before, and I also showed the fingers and the toes and stuff and how the animals placed their feet on the ground, and then demonstrated that. And you guys could see the video. There'll probably be a link. And I also want to just presence right now the sacred fire that we have going. We made some offerings to release certain energies and call in the ancestors, and to ask for creativity and protection and power for this conversation. And I want to also presence the Chumash Nation, the people that originally inhabited this land that we're making this recording on right now, in this wonderful place we now call Santa Barbara.
Yeah, a lot of gratitude.
And I'm grateful to do this podcast. I'm grateful to hang out with Jake. We've been talking for hours, eating, drinking tea, and we just played some music together for the first time, and it's a nice celebration. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to be here, for so many reasons, some of which you just pointed at. Just how special it is to be on this place, on this planet, right now, in this area. But to go a little further back, something that you're saying, within the nuts and bolts of the tracking, and it almost to me seems like, from my perspective, being very non-experienced in doing that, and you on the other end of that, being very experienced, my observation is almost as if, like, you're consciously like pointing out the fabric of the interconnectivity of our experience in the environment, in the area that we're in right now, or that you happen to be in any given moment. And then, but going further than acknowledging and recognizing our interconnectivity, but then to follow those threads, and to then and see the sequence that has led up to those threads being seen by you, and yeah, I'm curious if you experience it kind of that way, like seeing and reaching back into these other times, but like a de-emphasis on the other, maybe, because it seems like
what a way to look at tracking is that you are looking at marks that were made by real animals in real time, and you're recreating a scenario that you just came upon that already happened when you weren't there. And tracking is piecing things together. And the more experience that you have looking at the tracks and analyzing them, the more easy it becomes to piece it together and piece together scenarios and stuff of times and things like that. And also it makes it easier to piece together like the hows, like how is this animal moving right now, and then being able to actually become the animal yourself and recreate the tracks on the ground. That's a really good exercise in tracking to put you into the mind of the animal. And tracking is an art form and a science. It's a science in that animals have a certain universality within their species or their families for what their foot structures are. And once you start to look at the different families of mammals in your area, you start to realize that there's consistencies within the tracks, and that you can start to see the similarities of a tree squirrel and a ground squirrel and a chipmunk in terms of the universality of the digits and the toes and the fingers that are touching the ground and the marks that they leave. There's size differences. There'll be size differences, and there'll be also morphological differences in the way that the fingers bend, whether it's a really symmetrical track, like as if you could bisect it vertically and horizontally and have, evenness, or if you put that grid on it, is it actually a little asymmetrical and stuff, and the claws are pointing in different directions. There's ways to map the animal feet and the marks on the ground, and you can familiarize yourself with the families of animals, with their foot morphology, and you can put the tracks together like that, because deer have a certain track that they leave. They're ungulates, they're hoofed animals, so they're I'm showing Jake right now. I'm holding up my right hand, and I'm holding my middle finger and my ring finger together, and I put them down and I spread them apart, and that's the deer hooves, actual morphologically the same as the deer walks on their middle finger and their ring finger.
Wow.
And then behind those, where you see the distinct two marks of the deer track, there's your pointing finger and your pinky, and if you push them back and also make like a little square, these are the dew claws, and deers also have little remnant claws that are back and up a little bit. You see them when they're really galloping or splaying or in soft mud. You can see the dew claws, but it's the same as our hands, and the same with like a bear has the same thumbs and fingers that we do too. It just looks like a foot, but it's a hand and a foot. And all animals, all four-legged mammals, they have a hand and a foot. We call it like paws, or some colloquial term, like as if they have 4 feet. They don't have 4 feet. They have 2 hands and 2 feet. Yeah, nothing has 4 feet.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's making me think it's making me like reevaluate like raccoons, for example. I'm just like, okay, oh wait, oh yeah, that's right. I've never thought that far into it. It's just like, oh yeah, it's not just like a bunch of paws that can like get in your trash cans and like open your doors if you leave them unlocked.
Right.
Like, oh no, they got their hands.
That's interesting you bring that up. Different animals have different senses that they're more keen on. Like, for instance, a bobcat is really interested in visuals. The face is forward. It has stereoscopic vision, and when you look at a cat's face, it's looking back at you as if it was your own face too. And so they're visual. They also smell, they also listen, they also feel, they activate all these things, but their dominant sense is visual. For a raccoon, the way that their hands, their front paws, their hands are configured like fingers, like our own little hands. They look like little baby hands in the sand. And they touch everything, and they get so much information from touching. And when you watch a raccoon like rooting around in the water and it's touching for things, it's looking off in the distance, maybe listening and looking for predators while it's touching everything madly. Feeling everything, and then it finds a crayfish, and boom, it grabs it, boom, eats the crayfish.
Okay.
And so different animals have different dominant senses, and that's an interesting aspect of the science of tracking, as well as the foot morphology. That's the science of tracking.
Yeah.
The art of it is more being able to put together the long-term experience of your ability to recognize in the field what you're looking at, actually piecing the story together, and also being able to start to extrapolate different information from the tracks that might not necessarily have to do with the morphology of the track itself, but where the track is found, what it's doing, the condition of the animal, all kinds of things come into the art of tracking. And one of the arts is also to be able to move like the animal and get in that space and try to see through the eyes.
And to articulate it in a way that for somebody like me can like hear and understand, you know, what it is that you're trying to describe. Because like what I hear from you when you know, talk about this, and when I watch that video and see that interaction you have when you're looking at the you know, given tracks, it's like you're seeing something that most people aren't gonna see. You know, you're seeing into something that, like, you know, talk about like, you know, different animals having different senses, being like, you know, more heightened or less. I mean, I was speaking for myself. I'm not tuned in to that realm at all. You know, it, like like relative to you, to being able to like look at some raccoon tracks on the ground, and to then be able to really even be able to like know that they would be raccoon tracks. You know, much less to then be able to share with somebody nearby how a raccoon moves, and that like, oh, they were probably going over here for this sort of reason. It's almost like I personally experience you as almost being like a liaison to like for somebody like me to understand and to see into the world, the whole world around us, you know, that we're a part of, that doesn't have a voice in the same way that other humans do. You know, it's much easier to like hear you hear your name off and oh, you turn your head. You know, it's like we're tuned in a lot of times to that, and like kind of our, you know, just what's in front of our faces, you know, not like what's down on the ground, you know. And so to see and to hear you be able to point at, you know, some like, you know, little mouse tracks, and to you know, describe an entire, and to bring a whole experience into light is so much more than just that experience that happened in that moment that made those tracks. But it's like giving like this connection, you know, point for people who don't see those things, you know, to be able to then like understand and witness the world, you know, like even in a bit of a way, and how you do.
This reminds me of what you were saying at the very beginning about the interconnectedness and a part of the fabric. And tracking for me has really connected me with the fabric of the natural world and what's going on, you know, on the ground. And having that wherewithal, that presence with the tracks does make me feel very connected and interconnected. And also to be able to share the knowledge, to be able to explain what I'm seeing to people, it's good for me and it's good for other people. Trackers are, they're like storytellers of the landscape. They go out and they go for a little hour walk, you know? And when you hang around a lot of trackers, that hour can become like 3 hours of talking later. And then you talk with other trackers that weren't there, that start asking you questions about what you saw, and then you start to revise your theories and your things, and you start building these actual concepts around how these animals are moving on the landscape this time of year in this context. And then it points to things, to indications of what's going on in the landscape. You know, you might not know it exactly, but it may be where the water is right now, or where there's a berry bush blooming, you know, or pushing out fruit, and these animals are moving in this direction, or there's a mouse bloom on this hillside in this grass patch, and that's why these things are leading there. And so it is really, it goes back to our first podcast when we were talking about the mind mapping the topography of your homeland, and how the topography of your homeland becomes part of your mind, because you can go once you experience your homeland and you know the mountains and you know the rivers, you know the creeks, you know the side canyons, you know where all the trails are, and you know where all these different trees and plants and all these things are. That's all encoded in your mind, and your mind remembers these. Your mind dreams about these things later, and you can go back to these places in your mind and be there as well. And this thing about tracking just puts you more into that place where you become a storyteller of your landscape, a knowledgeable person of your landscape, and also it gives you the ability to empathize with the landscape on a deeper level, and you develop a sort of telepathy.
Well, that's the thing, is not only do you develop that ability to further empathize, but that's what gets shared to what I see right away when I see you and hear you expressing and sharing about what you're seeing and what you can experience through, you know, interacting with the environment that you're in. And so then it like gives an access point for empathy for people who like aren't there and aren't looking down, you know, if they are there, you know, in that sort of sense. That's just something that's really interesting to me, because it seems like it's like, you know, and on like the being a storyteller note too, it's like it's that, and it's almost like within that, like, because the forest doesn't have a voice, but you do.
It does now.
Yeah. And so by being there and being openly like engaged with the fabric of all of it, you know, that you're part of in the moment, then you can speak of it and you know, and in a way that not everybody can, you know. And so it's just really cool to experience that. And I'm just really curious about like how, like
a little background is that I've actually started to really draw and study tracks in 1998, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
And I have spent a lot of time, you know, analyzing tracks, and I've tracked all over this country, you know, and seen a lot of cool stuff. And yet, no matter where I go elsewhere, I'm kind of a little unsure myself. But when I come home to my homeland, I feel confident in my tracking, you know, and but you always have to keep in mind with tracking is that you can arrive at certain assumptions that aren't real, and you can really feel like you're right about what you're looking at. And if you track all by yourself, and so you are your only sole storyteller, and there's nobody else around that you can bounce anything off of, you can sort of assume things that aren't necessarily scientifically right about the tracks. You might think that a coyote track is actually a house dog track, you know,
right.
And you're looking at a house dog track, but you're saying, I know that's a coyote because I'm here every day and I hear them at night and they're here and it's poop, and it's poops right there, you know. It's like, and if you teach tracking, like let's say that you there's the person that only tracks by themselves, so they live within their assumptions and their theories may not be calibrated with the outside world.
Right.
When you start to track and teach, you start to realize that you can also carry those assumptions into the teaching experience, because you're passionate with the students are there and there's tracks going on, and sometimes you can actually make a kangaroo rat into a deer track if you want to, even with a lot of experience, you know. So tracking is one of these things that really keeps your humility, your exuberance and wild assumptions more humbled.
Right, because in like in the realist sense, if you're by yourself out in the forest and like that's how you're getting by is like being in that space, the stakes are very high. You know, like if you like you could waste a whole day and like not find what you're looking for, whether it be water or something to eat or whatever the thing is, you know, like so if getting caught up in something like that that's not true, you know, like could really cost in a big way in a real sense if, you know, depending on the context.
The beauty of tracking is that it brings out that, you know, it really, it makes you live your mistakes. And when you do when you do live these mistakes, they stand out. Like it's just like a neon sign. Oh my God. And so one of the great things that tracking teaches me is that it teaches me to stay in check and to be present and not jump to conclusions, which I have a propensity to do naturally in life.
Yes,
you know,
me too.
so it's like this tempering activity, but I still get stumped and I still get, you know, mystified by tracks. But now when I'm mystified, I don't have an answer. I'll just wait, you know, and then I'll share my story with other people, other naturalists or trackers or people that love nature, and then get calibrated, and the answer may come later on, you know, like, what was that? Oh, and another thing about tracking that's really interesting when we look at the umbrella of detective skills and sleuthing and forensics and all that, is that you can really approach tracking from a very simple recipe, and it's called the art of questioning. And what you do is you ask, who made the track? So we come upon a track on the ground like this, like that, and we say, so first thing is like, who did it? And you're like, whoa, that's the first thing you got to answer is like, who did it? That's where field guides and stuff come in, and people that might know a little bit more and that it can explain what's going on in that track. And so then you can go, this is a mountain lion track. Oh, okay. And then the next question is what was it doing? What was it doing here? What? You know, and then that makes you think a little bit more like, whoa, what was it doing? Well, it was going that way, and it's following that little trail that kind of squeezes between the mallow and the calendula, and it goes right up by the banana leaf and the rock and goes up that hill. Oh, so it was moving through here. It wasn't running, it was just moving through. So that's what it was doing. It was moving in this direction, it was moving through. And it was calm. It wasn't running, it wasn't stalking, it wasn't bounding through here with speed, it wasn't, you know, eating something, it didn't die right there. It's just moving through. And then you say, when did it come? So you got, who is it? What's it doing? When was it here? And then you sequence that by every day there's light in the morning, it goes all day, and then it's dark at night. During the day, certain winds come up, and you know there may be a east wind in the morning, followed by a southwest wind in the afternoon. So you can read whatever's moving across your track. You can see what animals stepped across. Like if a quail stepped across this, I would say, oh, the lion came before the quail. So you start to sequence when. And then after when, you get to why. Why is there a mountain lion in the first place here? Well, this is mountain lion habitat. There's mule deer right over on the hillside right now foraging on poison oak, you know. This is a place where it can sneak through, find prey, and eat. That's kind of why it's a habitat question. Like, you know, you don't find, you don't find jaguars in Vermont, you know. That's a habitat question. And if you did, then that would be quite a why.
Quite some questions.
Yeah, and then so why kind of asks a bigger question, which makes you look at the landscape. It looks at the vegetation patterns, the trail, the topography, the food sources, the water, the denning, how does an animal feel comfortable here? Why? This is part of its territory for a reason. And then the other art is, where is the animal now? Yeah. So you have who is it? What's it doing? When was it here? Why is it here in the first place? And now where is it? Where is it now? Where did it come from before it made that track and went up the hill right there? Where did it come from that way? So you pick up the trail and you go back and you backtrack the animal to see where it was in relation to where it is now in the track right in front of you, and then where's it going? The where question begs you as a tracker to pick up the trail and start following it, right? That's taking you deeper into the forest. Where is that animal now?
Yeah.
And for the best results on following that animal, you want to find the freshest possible track. So you want to know when that track was made, within a close proximity to when you were there, so that you know you're close enough behind that animal that if you move quickly and silently enough and you can follow the trail well in order to walk at a quick pace without making a bunch of fucking noise and scaring a bunch of stuff, then you can get a glimmer of it. You could come up over that hill, boom, 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 follow the trail, drop down into another little dry valley. There it is, right down there by the sagebrush bush. And then it sees you, and then it disappears into the thicket. And you get to see it, you know? You get to trail it. You get to come on that animal. And you can do it with deer and bear and mountain lion and coyotes and bobcats and anything. You can trail squirrels if you want to, mice, you know, voles, you know. And
not that we're necessarily recommending anybody just go off and try to catch up to a bear, you know, but like, just as
I don't know, I'd say go for it. Okay. No, just kidding. There are certain, you do have to be careful. But I'll tell you, if we had to be as careful as some of how our fears are driven around these animals, like mountain lions or bears or coyotes or bobcats or badgers or anything. We bring a lot of fear to the table. These animals don't necessarily want to see you, you know. And what I've found by trailing animals is that they somehow know right before you're about to see them that they've been, you know, you've caught up to them. And they tend to look at you with a different level of respect.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily out of aggression or anything. And
because you're not there out of aggression.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not hunting.
No.
But I am hunting on a level of wanting to answer the question where.
Yeah. Well, but that's also where the kind of like we were talking about before we started this, where the words can kind of get the meanings can kind of be a little different, and so that word hunting can, you know, it has like, to me almost has like an aggressive or violent connotation to it. Right. You know, while I think what I hear you saying within that is like the pursuit, you know, aspect of a hunt is maintained, you know, within following through with that question. Right. You know,
what helps to commune with nature and to be a part of the fabric is to have that good intention when you're actually on the trail of an animal. You don't really want to step on the tracks as you're trailing. You stay to the side to preserve the trail for maybe others to see, or just preserve the trail, because when you start stepping in animal tracks, they feel you way up ahead. They feel you walking in their trail.
Wow.
And this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And so you do want to move with respect. And it's also a game of hide and seek.
Yeah.
That's how nature is. Everyone's hiding, seeking. And when it's like playing the game of trying to find the person that's hiding and you're the seeker. And it's a game, and it's a beautiful dance. It's a dance with nature, a dance with a fresh trail that you're moving on in such a way where your body is moving at a quicker pace than the animal that you're trailing, so that you can actually catch up to it and get a picture, get a glimmer, get a facial, It's like look each other in the eyes, and it doesn't harm the animals in any way.
No.
And it's a beautiful thing to do. And when, if you're going to, trail deer to hunt them, if you are a really good trailer, then you wouldn't waste a lot of time in the woods. You would go straight to the deer and find your quarry, And people do eat off the landscape still.
So, speaking of the deer, something that you said about if a mountain lion had come through here, this particular place, that there would be there would be some deer on the other side, and they'd be grazing on what, and so that to me seems like you're here right now, but there's a part of you that's also over there on the other side of the hill at the same time. And
that's
maybe
the telepathy I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's like the pinnacle of the whole thing, is to be able to actually see the animal over the hill, and then go to the animal over the hill, because you are connected.
It's almost, you found the threads, the thread of the fabric, and it's like, and not even always, because like, you're not over there right now, you're right here. And so just by having been connected to that thread, and not just, it's because it's not a thread, it's the fabric, the quilt, so to speak, that becomes like natural to you, because earlier you were talking about, okay, you have this access through, a hand, and if it's tilted to the left and it's tilted to the right, then what that would mean based on that grid lock. But speaking for myself, like with a guitar, over time, like, yes, that's how you get to that place of understanding, but then that sort of stuff becomes integrated in a sense to where it's just natural,
Yes, that's really beautiful. In the beginning, when you're learning this tracking, it's really good to have your grid and to learn your foot morphology and stuff, because it's a universal for that species, like a ground squirrel's track is going to look like a ground squirrel every single freaking time, unless it's obscured in some substrate. And if every ground squirrel in the world put a perfect right hand track down, you would be able to establish, like, that's what a ground squirrel's track looks like.
Right.
Once you start to be able to recognize ground squirrels in an instant, you come upon a track and you look at, like, I come out here every morning, there's skunk that come through here, and coyotes that come through here, a mountain lion has come through here, deer have come through here, fox come through here regularly. It's a gray fox track because you've seen 1,000, I'm speaking for myself, thousands of gray fox tracks. But now, after thousands of gray fox tracks, I now see individuals. I see the individual.
Yeah.
It's not a universal.
Yes.
It's not an illustration.
Yeah.
It's an actual individual fox on the landscape. And I can I can see more like digital things, like little anomalies in the way that the toes are positioned, or the way that the heel looks, and
Right.
it just has an overall pudgy effect, or this one has an overall kind of skinny, elongated quality to it on these minute levels of nuance,
Yeah.
and that's where tracking, as you do it for years and years, you do. And I remember hearing stories when I first started, yeah, you'll be able to tell the difference between individuals, and I was like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. But you wake up one day and you walk out and you're all, whoa, look at this.
Yeah.
Whoa, there's a big male skunk here, and there's the female. And there's an interloper, young male over there. And you see it right in the tracks. You're like, oh my God, that's what was going on last night. What?
So that's where, again, from just how I can see, like, where what you talked about, becoming the animal, becoming the scene that you're asking those questions about, and where it's like, when you get so in tune to it, where you don't have to make those calculations, so to speak, in real time. It's already an integrated and a part of you, and you're so familiar with the pattern of the quilt, in a sense, that it's just there. You're already connected to that movement, and so when you see that on the ground, again, this is like just what I see when I hear you talk about this, is like that experience being like, oh, now you can, like, move just like you see that fox must have moved, in that paw print, and that individual fox, and to be able to see, like, oh, maybe this, I don't know, like, this particular fox, like, had hurt its paw at some point in its life, and then, like, the one paw maybe is a thing, and so then, without having to calculate it or, like, rehearse it or whatever, in a sense, you can be an expression of that in your own way, and back to not just literal voice, but give voice and give expression to that moment in time that the fox isn't gonna let anybody see,
Right.
but it still happened, and it's beautiful, and and it's a part of us, potentially to different degrees. It's a part of us regardless, but, like, we can totally be nil aware of something, and hardly, and just be numb to it, in a sense, and so
I wanna just interject something right here, because you brought up a point right now on your own, and it was the next point that I was gonna bring up. And so we'll go back to the art of questioning, the who made the track, what was it doing, when was it here, why was it here, where is it now? And the last question of the art of questioning around tracking is, how did the animal move? And I learned how animals move by watching them and seeing their actual patterns on the ground in their trails, and then recreating that on the beach, somewhere where you have deep sand and you can really see where your tracks are, and you make the exact same trail as a bobcat.
yeah,
Cats all move the same.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be a cat, you might as well be a mountain lion, because you're big, and then you walk like a mountain lion. You can walk like a bear. You can walk like a raccoon. You can do rabbit form and do that. You can move like a deer. And you can pretend that you're actually these animals, And one of the things that I was prompted to do in my study of tracking was to adopt the form of an animal for a week. Every day you go into the woods, don't be a human bipedalizing. Pretend you're a deer for a week. Walk around the forest like you're a deer. Make the same sound. Stop and go. Move like a deer. Move to the next thing. Point into the bush. Forage a little. Then move. Go up the hill a little bit, turn around, look over your shoulder, keep moving. Do what a deer does all day long. Play deer all day without, you don't break character. And then maybe another week you'll be a bobcat and you walk like a bobcat, you move like a bobcat, you go where a bobcat goes. And all of a sudden you realize that when you are honest to yourself and you're moving like these animals and you're play acting, you actually start doing what a bobcat would do. And it's like, whoa, this is amazing, and you start going where the animal that you take the form of goes. And you get a window in. And when you move like that and you actually move your body like an animal, oh man, that's a powerful thing to do. That type of mimicry it builds more circuitry in your brain, and you're able to look at things and analyze behavior really well.
Right.
Because you're inculcating other animals' movements into your own movements, and for what were you gonna say?
Oh no, please.
I just think it's a totally fascinating thing that after we were talking about where you went into like, well, you work how the animal moves, and like that's it. You took it to the next level, and that's where we go through the who all the way to the how, and it's like, whoa, if you answer those 6 or 7 questions, if you apply that questioning to everything in life and everything in nature, then all you do is you have a file cabinet with these empty files that say who, what, when, where, why, how, and then you walk up to a plant and you're all, okay, who's the plant? Oh, it's Phacelia. What does it do? It blooms at this time of the year. It does this. It throws this seed. It does that. It provides food for this. Like when does it happen? Well, it blooms in June. Wow. Why is it here? Because it loves this type of climate on this hillside. It grows from 900 feet to 2,200 feet, and you won't find it above or below that. You'll find it just in this little band, and it's like, whoa, wow. And then where is it? It's right here. It doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And then how is a plant? The how is like, that's like trying to get into the form of the plant. That means like, how do you heal the human family? How do you help how do you help us help you? What do you need from me? That's the how with plants. Like you want to reach across the aisle and talk to the plant. I talk to all animals. I talk to animals. They're not as they're a little more ephemeral. But what you can actually talk to a plant too, and develop a relationship with it, and over time you will be in the how. From the who. But I meet a lot of people, that get really intimidated about learning names and stuff, and learning these things, and like, what's habitat? And it's like, so, like we were talking about before, daunting. And it's not for everyone, but if you do want to get to how, you want to cover the who first. Which means you might have to learn some names, and names aren't evil, and just because the binomial nomenclature, the scientific language around naming species and placing it in a phylogenetic order and all that was created by Carl Linnaeus, who also created a hierarchy of the humans. He placed white people higher than darker races, and because he did that, and he was part of like an institutionalized scientific form of racism that a lot of people don't really want to be a part of the binomial nomenclature and don't want to follow phylogeny. But the science, I say you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's another example of this. There's a man, Herbert Aptheker, and he was a scholar that did a lot of really incredible work around the civil rights movements, the days of slavery, the antebellum South. He is one of the most outspoken scholars in the area to expose, what was going on in these times, from a liberal perspective, not from a perspective of that you believe in white supremacy. He was not that. And he ended up having an incestuous relationship with his daughter, and that came out after he died, and and people want to expunge him from the history of slavery, and his contribution to it is renowned, and so it creates an incongruity, and I don't think we can throw the baby out with the bathwater with that either, and we're in a time, we're in a cultural milieu, we're in this thing called civilization where there's a lot of inequities, and there is a lot of backwards thinking still. We realize it's 2021, and people are still trying to pass voting laws that restrict people from participating in their right to be a citizen, to choose in a democracy who is their leader. Our franchise is being taken away by people that do horrible things, but we can't throw away our entire governmental structure because there's people now trying to hijack it.
Right.
And so that's just a little how the story spreads out. But as far as names go, it's really important to learn the names of things for people, because it puts you on a one-on-one basis with stuff. And a lot of people, really great naturalists and scientists, have gone ahead and studied these animals and these plants with all their life vigor, and they put it into text, they put it into papers, they put it into field guides, they put it into novels, they put it into stuff that illuminates the beauty of nature and has a word for it, and we connect with that through story.
And like you were saying earlier, what was you say exactly? Everything can either be a tool, a toy, or a weapon. Words, a hammer,
This bottle,
a banjo.
a banjo.
Yeah, the words and thoughts and ideas, and tools, whatever these things are, whatever the context is. Particularly, here we are doing a podcast. We're using the form of words right now, intentionally, therefore as a tool. Sometimes it's fun. We're like, so it's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of a toy sometimes. But it's like, no, this is in a sense, an act of taking something that can be exploitative or whatever, depending on the intention, or that can be used to distort or attack somebody, but that's not inherent in what in the foundation of what we're working with. That's not what the tools do. That's not what the ideas do. That's how they're applied, and not just how they're applied, which I guess how they're applied is a reflection of the underlying motives of that, and so that's
intentionality.
And that's where our power comes in, and that's where not just our power but our responsibility in this environment, that you're describing, this cultural setting that we're in right now, to do the best we can to recognize those like contradicting things, those spaces, those aspects of reality that are difficult and, for lack of a better term, ugly to look at, or disturbing, or totally not cool, but also other things that are totally cool, potentially.
For instance, right now, another example would be the eloquence and the absolute passion of Dr. Martin Luther King, and the influence he has had on peace in the world, and that could be contradicted by his womanizing or something, or FBI tapes of him getting it on with other people than his wife. And I just think that we do live in very contradictory times, and it behooves us in our responsibility to put our best foot forward, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Agreed. But we got to try.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think this responsibility aspect comes in, where it's just like, okay, like, do our best to recognize that, I mean, it's a contradiction just to exist at all. Like, all of it, like, literally to be anything doesn't make any sense, no matter how hard we think about it. So,
well, for you and me, Jake, we got to just do the best we can.
Yeah. But not just us. I think everybody should. Everybody can. Everybody has this potential, in them to see.
I'm trying to promote us as role models.
I don't know if I'd be a role. No, it's
better be.
It's everybody else. No, it's like, but it's together. It's a collaboration.
You just did it.
That's the idea. It's a collaboration, and we can do our best. We can use particularly the technology that we have available to us all right now to be able to learn,
beautiful technology,
and then to be able to learn in an empowering way that can help us understand, and it in the same sort of sense, like I was talking about earlier, like looking back at my hometown and in the East Coast, and just trying to learn about why was it built there. Oh, there was a iron mine, or there was a forge. Oh, all this stuff. Oh, what do you know? Everything was clear cut for miles. All this sort of stuff. Like, so I can go 15 minutes out of my way to learn a couple things intentionally, and then from there I can do something.
The story.
Yeah, or not. That's where the responsibility comes in. I personally think it's important to.
You told me the story, man. It's the story of every town in the East Coast area.
Exactly. And
all the way out, not even, you can't just point to the East Coast. From the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, it's the same story.
At least. And
we built our houses, we built our roads, we built our towns on top of people that were already here.
Yeah, right on top of them.
Right on top of them, and when we act like they're not there.
And we also act like the raccoons aren't here, and we also act like the birds. Yeah, and that they don't deserve to be here too. And we put up the fences, and and that's where, to me,
live trap them and relocate
to where like we're in their house, and that's. And again, that's where, to me, the responsibility comes to be open and to learn and to apply those things that you talked about, those questions that you talked about within tracking, beyond tracking, and not just beyond tracking, but to expand what tracking is to where are we right now? How do we get here? Apply those questions to ourselves. Just be like, wait, what am I doing here? Where the fuck did I go? Where do we come from?
We need to start applying the art of questioning to everything.
I really think that
don't move forward until you answered all 7 questions, at least in a reasonable fashion.
I think that's a good goal and direction to move in, and I want to thank you for doing this once again. I hope we can sit down and share another conversation at some point in the future with everybody else.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you.
I know we can.
I know we can.
Yeah, I know we can.
I hope we do.
We can do this. We can do this. Man, Jake, I am just even more comfortable, more stoked. I like the way that the conversation's going, I really appreciate being able to tell my story, and thanks for the thoughtful questions about tracking and the video and animal movements and all that. I would like to tell one little tiny story before we
please
cut off.
Absolutely.
About becoming
yes.
I mean, some of my friends have heard this. Every one of my friends has heard this story at least once. But when I was doing the animal form stuff, it was up here on the on Mountain Drive, a little further west, in the 1300 block, and I started out my first day as a bobcat. I walked out my front door. I live on Mountain Drive. I walked out my front door. I got down on all fours, and I started walking in a direct registration pattern like cats do. And I started moving out into the yard, and I skirted this mustard patch, and then it took me to the edge of this like 20-foot steep embankment that went down into this dry creek bed. And so I skirted that, and I came down on all fours. I was moving like a bobcat. I was trying not to unearth a lot of earth. I was being really delicate about where I was placing myself and being quiet and paying attention and trying to get into the whole vibe of being a bobcat. And I was moving along, and I finally got down into the dry wash, and I started moving like a bobcat, and this jay comes in and just all, skeek, 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 just started alarming me, you know, like coming up like I was a threat, like a threat animal, you know? Like, I was like, whoa, that was what, you know, maybe that's what scrub jays do when they see a bobcat. And I was all, whoa, I'm excited. And then I started going down the wash more, and I'm going through these weeds and ducking myself really low, belly crawling underneath, you know, debris in the creek. And I keep moving and keep moving. And all of a sudden I come to this little culvert, this like 3.5, 4 foot round concrete cylinder thing that goes right underneath the road. And it was clear, I could see through the other, I came up on it, I could see the other side, and I heard this specific type of bird called a canyon wren, and it was just going, bzz, 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 bzz. It was foraging, and I could see it past, like flying past the light hole, you know. There was like a steep section with rocks, and when the water blows through those culverts, it creates a lot of erosion, and so the other side, there's a lot of tree roots exposed and stuff, and really great haunts for spiders and other insects. And so this wren is like foraging and eating, you know, in this root system of this tree along the bank there at the outside of the culvert's hole. And so I'm like stalking through, and I get like halfway through, and I'm moving really slowly, and I'm getting close up to the edge, like about 3 feet away from the end of the tunnel. And I'm like, and I kind of stop for a second, and the canyon wren comes flying in at 100 miles an hour and goes right into my mouth. Was kind of open, and it flew right into my mouth, like by accident, just like boom. And this canyon wren was in my mouth, and I just like, I like broke being a bobcat. I became a startled human, and I like spit the wren out of my mouth. And there's little downy feathers sticking to my lips and blowing in the air. And the canyon wren takes off at a really slow, direct pace, just flapping its wings all. And it pooped a couple times and then landed on a branch. And I was just like, oh my God, a canyon wren just flew into my mouth. And then I was like, well, I was being a bobcat, you know?
Oh my gosh.
And the bird flew right into my mouth, and I was like, well, I guess I wasn't being a very good bobcat because that was a free meal.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Wow. That's so cool. Seriously, thanks for sharing that, Mike. Seriously, thanks for sharing yourself with us.
Thank you.
Seriously, it's so cool. And thanks everybody for listening.
Peace out, you guys.
That was Mike Kresky, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for directing your attention our way. I cannot express how grateful I am to be heard by you. Thank you. Until next time.
Bye.